Most parents in Singapore are working hard to give their kids the best start in life, good school, enrichment classes, and tuition classes. But what if you could give them something even bigger? Not just a good education, but a real head start. One where they get to not just afford life, but choose how they live it. And the thing most parents don't realize is that you do not need to have a high income to do this. Even with as little as $50 a month, which is less than 3 chicken rice a week, you can set your kid up for life. In this video, I'm going to break down how to make your kid a millionaire, the math behind it, and how you can actually invest for your kid. Let's not waste any time and let's jump right in. Alright, let's start with the math first. Let's say you invest $50 a month from the day your kid is born, and it grows at 8% a year. By age 65, it will reach $1.33 million. Bump it up to $150 a month and you get $4 million. $300 a month, $8 million. And it all comes down to one thing, time. Here's why. When you first start investing, nothing much seems to be happening. You look at your accounts and be like, do something lah. But then one day, compounding suddenly kicks in and your money starts growing faster and faster. And by the time your kid turns 65, the compounding has already done 99% of the work. Meanwhile, your total contributions only add up to less than 1% of the final portfolio value. What this means is that it's not just about getting a good return, it's also about how much time you give your money to grow. But then, this is actually what's happening in real life. Most parents will say, "Aiya, we will start next year lah," or "when we have more cash lah," or "after the childcare cost comes down lah." And soon, the next year becomes the year after, which comes when they start primary school, then secondary school, and so on. And I want to show you exactly what that costs. So let's say you invest $100 a month. If you start from the day your kid is born, at 8% return, that goes to $2.66 million by age 65. But if you wait until they are 3 before you start, you'll already be down to $2.09 million. Age 5, $1.78 million. Age 10, $1.19 million. And if you only start when it turns 15, it drops to just $793,000. That is $1.87 million gone just from waiting for 15 years. But then some of you might say, sure not, long-term investing confirm can get this kind of returns meh? Of course not guaranteed lah, nobody can promise that. But imagine you are Dr. Strange looking into the future and are running 500 different versions of investing scenarios. Some markets will what? Some zero, while others go nowhere for years. If you plot all of them into a chart, you will get a range of outcomes like this. The green line up the top is the best case scenario, while the red line at the bottom is the worst 10%, where you have your crash scenarios and lost decades. But even that ends with a meaningful money. Meanwhile, the purple line in the middle is your median. That is where most people will land, at roughly $1.59 million. But then some of you might say, how much is that even worth 65 years later? And that's actually a really good point. When adjusted for inflation, that $2.66 million would only be worth about $534,000 in today's money. But even so, this isn't a trivial number at all, because all of this money grew from just $78,000. And besides, $534K is still actually a lot of money, yeah. With it, you can already buy 2 cars or a 4-room HDB flat. And if you feel that is not enough, no worries. You can always just bump it up to $200 a month. That gets you over $1 million in today's money. Whatever the case, the goal isn't to make your kid the richest kid in Singapore. That one probably already taken by some tauke. Instead, the goal is to give them a foundation so that they do not have to build from scratch. So whether it is 500K, 200K, or even 100K, that is still a head start most kids in Singapore will never start with. Great! So how do we start? Before we even start, let's talk about the free money first. And by that, I'm talking about the baby bonus scheme, where for every dollar you top up to the child development account, the government will match your contributions dollar for dollar up to a certain limit. For example, for your first kid, if you top up $4,000 into the CDA, the government will match you dollar for dollar. So if you put in 4K, they will also put in 4K. There is a 100% return before you even start investing. And this is on top of the $11,000 baby bonus cash gift plus a $5,000 first step grant deposited straight into the CDA, or to thank you and your partner for HO and contributing to the total fertility rate. Then the more kids you have, the more grants you will get. Now, unfortunately, you cannot withdraw CDA funds as cash, but you can use it to pay for your kids' childcare, kindergarten, and approved healthcare expenses, which are all expenses you will have to pay for anyway. Now, some of you might have heard of the strategy made famous by the CPF guru, Mr. Lu, where he talks about topping up your kids' CPF special accounts to make them a millionaire. The idea is this: every Singapore citizen kid has a CPF account from birth. By topping up just $64,350 to the special account, the money will grow at 4 to 5% government guaranteed interest. And by the time your kid turns 65, the one top-up will compound to $1 million. Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't work, because it does work. But personally, I will not do this, and the reason is simple. By topping up money to SA, that money gets locked up all the way until your kid becomes an old apek or old ama. This means your kid cannot use it for things like education, buying a flat, or any of the big expenses that happen before 55. So while you are setting aside money for a kid, that money cannot help them when they need it the most. Which is why I would rather put it somewhere flexible instead, which brings us to investing. For this, you have a few options. First up, DBS has the Invest Saver. It lets you invest in 5 SGS ETFs covering the STI, REITs, and bonds from $100 a month. Fees are 0.82% for equities and 0.5% for bonds. Then OCBC has the Blue Chip Investment Plan. With it, you will get access to 20 over SGS Blue Chips and ETFs from $100 a month. Fee is 0.88% per transaction. And unlike DBS where the account is in the parent's name only, with OCBC, your kid's name actually goes on the accounts from day one. Then there's the Poems Junior Share Builders Plan. At over 70 SGS counters, it has the widest selection of the three. You start from $100 a month, and the fee is 0.3% per year on your portfolio, capped at $8.88 a month. And just like OCBC, you can put the accounts under your kid's name from day one. Now, while all three are solid options, personally I prefer using interactive brokers instead. That's because not only does IBKR allow you to invest in a much wider selection of stocks and ETFs, it also charges a much lower fee of just 35 cents per trade. Not only that, you can also open a sub-account under the same login to keep your kids' portfolio separate from yours. Then, when they eventually turn 18, they can just open their own IBKR accounts and you transfer the holdings over. So simple. So those are your platform options. Now, the real question is, what should you actually buy? Not financial advice, but here's what I would go for. The first option is to go global. The top two picks here are ACWD and VWRA, which cover thousands of companies across the developed and emerging markets. Both of them are Ireland domicile ETFs listed on the London Stock Exchange, which means you get to enjoy lower dividend withholding tax and no exposure to the US estate tax. Between the two, ACWD has the lower expense ratio at 0.12%, while VWRA costs 0.19%. Over 65 years, that difference would add up. However, if you prefer to invest in the S&P 500, which has the greatest companies on earth, you can check out SPYL. It has a much lower expense ratio of 0.03% as compared to CSBS at 0.07%. However, just bear in mind that while the US has dominated markets for the last 30 years, nobody knows if that will stay true in the future. And lastly, for US growth, QQM is a popular option. However, its downside is that it only covers the Nasdaq 100, which is heavily concentrated in the tech sector. So if you want broader US growth exposure, SCSG is the better pick. In short, the best time to start investing for a kid was the day they were born. The second best time is today. If this video helped you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.